Late this afternoon, Trump described mail-in voting as both dangerous and corrupt, citing no actual concrete evidence, even though he himself voted by mail last month.
You were highly critical of mail-in voting, mail-in ballots for voting.
I think mail-in voting is horrible.
You voted by mail
corrupt.
in Florida's election last month, didn't you?
Sure, I could vote by mail for that.
How do you reconcile
Because I'm
that?
allowed to. Well, that's called out of state. You know why I voted? Because I happen to be in the White House and I won't be able to go to Florida and vote.
What the president and the Republican Party want is to stop people from getting mail-in or absentee ballots universally, so they have access to the polls even during the pandemic, because they believe this helps them, right? I mean, an illness takes out the big bag cities, and what happens to the Republican vote totals statewide? Think about that. Making those people in that line in Milwaukee vote in the midst of a pandemic is a means for them to get more power. And unless something changes and we get a crash program to make voting universally accessible in this country, we could be staring into the future of what our national election looks like in the fall. And Republicans seem more than happy for that to be the case. Here with me now is NBC News political reporter Shaquille Brewster, who's been doing some great reporting in Milwaukee. Shaquille, what has it been like there today?
You know, Chris, it's interesting. Under normal circumstances, you and I would be talking about how different sides and candidates are feeling as we approach about an hour until the close of the polls here. But it's very clear that these are no normal circumstances. Voters who came out today in Wisconsin, they not only face risks to their health by coming out to the polls amid this pandemic, they face long lines in the cities that you've been seeing across the state. Here at this location in Milwaukee, the lines were consistently an hour and a half to 2 hours long. About an hour ago, there was a torrential downpour. There was also hail. So voters had to go through a lot to go and cast their ballot. And what you've been hearing from them is not only a frustration that they have to come out, that they feel forced to come out and vote under these circumstances, but it's a deep sense of patriotism. So many times and so many voters have told me simply, it is my duty. That's why I decided to come out. Listen to what this one voter told me. What are you feeling right now?
This is so wrong. This is just so wrong. This election should have been called off. You know, they're telling us to stay in the house and, you know, stand 6 feet from each other. But then one of the most important times, they're forcing us to come out here in a group. Stop playing politics with our lives. You know, that's what I'm feeling.
Like this is a game.
Yeah.
Chris, it's important to note that efforts definitely have been made to make this process as safe as possible. Voters were given hand sanitizer when they were entering the polls. There were tape marks all over inside the voting location to help enforce that social distancing that we're hearing about. There were poll workers, many poll workers who were National Guardsmen who were pulled in and volunteered, who went around and wiped down voting machines. People were, there was a seriousness that was taken with this, but it was very clear that this was a risk to voters who chose to come out, and there was that frustration that you heard from voter after voter. Chris?
All right, Shaquille Brewster doing great reporting today on this just unbelievable, frankly unbelievable scene unfolding in Milwaukee and around Wisconsin today. Thank you, Shaquille. Here to discuss how this election came to be, the Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin, Democrat Mandela Barnes, who tweeted this today, quote, "Good morning and welcome to the S Show. Today's episode has been produced by the Supreme Court and directed by the incomparable Speaker and Senate Majority Leader duo." Lieutenant Governor, how did we get to this point?
We got to this point through a long trend of voter suppression that's been going on in this state and across the country. Unfortunately, they saw an opportunity. Our speaker, our majority leader, our conservative, or you can just say Republican-controlled Supreme Court in the state of Wisconsin, and they saw an opportunity to suppress the vote here with coronavirus fears, which, you know, Governor Evers issued an executive order to delay this election, and they immediately appealed to the Supreme Court to overturn that decision, to keep this date in place so that a low turnout would benefit the Donald Trump endorsed Supreme Court candidate Dan Kelly. And it's unfortunate because they're playing politics with people's lives, as she said. And as the reporter on the ground stated, there was torrential downpour and hail. So people were literally battling hell and high water to cast a ballot, also while this coronavirus epidemic is taking place.
I know that obviously the governor that you work with has issued the executive order. He called for a delay. He did take a while to get there, though. I mean, I watched this whole thing build up for weeks. And, 3 weeks ago were sort of the last elections we had in this country. And that was a little questionable. Ohio decided to call it off. The 3 other states went ahead. But should Democrats in the state, should the governor, should you have raised the alarms earlier, more strenuously about this?
Well, alarms were raised, and I'll say one difference, too, is that the other states were simply having their presidential preference primaries. Here in Wisconsin, it was a general election for the spring here for many local offices, and like I said before, our Supreme Court race. And our governor also tried to work in good faith with the legislature. And again, we see what happens when you try that route. They don't respond to working in good faith. They are all about maintaining power here in the state and across this country. And trying to work in good faith with those Republican legislators, it got us down to the wire. And the governor saw what was going on in Milwaukee, where we see the COVID-19 pandemic ravaging the north side, where over half of the total deaths across our entire state have taken place in Milwaukee. And he did what he had to do in the final hour. And again, it shouldn't have gotten to that place anyway. Republicans in the legislature have failed to even convene. They haven't met.
How could there be any Democratic legitimacy to the outcome of this election, no matter who wins, whether the Democratic challenger or the Republican incumbent win? How can anyone view this as a legitimate election?
Well, obviously, yeah, there's absolutely be, people are going to think about this election and challenge any outcome. We should expect lawsuits to come in the coming weeks and the coming months. And it's unfortunate. It's a miscarriage of democracy. It didn't have to be this way. When the governor decided to move, regardless of how long it took, when the governor decided to move the election or decided that we should delay this election, it's a shame that they decided that chaos would be the best option. And now you see these long lines of people going through leaps and bounds, going over hurdles that they should not have to in order to cast a ballot. This is really an awful and frustrating time because, like I said before, people have fought and died for the right to vote. And now people are literally putting their lives at risk to cast a ballot. And in good faith, I can't even tell people to go out there and vote because it does not feel right. It is not the responsible thing to do. And that is the position that Republicans in the legislature have us in. And they thrive off chaos. I mean, look who their president is. This is their MO. And I don't know how long we can go this way, but I hope people don't forget this in November.
The president has endorsed multiple times, Mr. Kelly, who's the Republican incumbent here. What do you say to people that are watching this and saying to themselves, all this over a state Supreme Court seat? Like, what is wrong with these people? Like, I mean, why is this so important? Why is this election so important to the Republicans in your state?
Courts matter. Donald Trump has spent so much time building the judicial bench, the federal bench. And if there's an opportunity for them to keep a Supreme Court in any state under their control, they're going to take every advantage. I think that the decisions that we saw from the state Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court show us the urgency and show us how important the courts are in this system. And it's easy for people to forget about the judicial branch. And I get it because they're not the ones who are out there on TV doing the press conferences, issuing press releases. Their work is mostly quiet for the most part. But the fact is, we see how their decisions impact lives. We see how decisions when it comes to women's health, we see how decisions when it comes to overall health care in the state is dictated by the judicial branch. So it's important for us to wake up and understand and realize the importance of judicial elections and step up with the same energy that they approach these elections with. They are very unabashed when it comes to supporting judicial nominees. We, as progressives, as Democrats, need to step up and fight with the same vigor. We need to make sure that we are not going to let the courts fall into very regressive hands, those that want to turn back the hands of time, those that want to take us back centuries in terms of civil rights, in terms of voting rights, in terms of social justice, as far as equality. And the list goes on and on and on.
All right, Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes of Wisconsin, on this very, very crazy day, thank you for making a little time for us.
Yeah, thank you.
Team, subscribe for more of these type of videos.